going on, my good people, man? I'm in a house today. If you haven't known or if you haven't watched the news, um, they done had some storms out here today. So I'm chilling in the house. Got no need to be outside. So chilling in the house. And I went through one of my old notebooks. Went through one of my old notebooks. And guess what I found? I found these notes that I took a long time ago. Oh, so I took these notes in 2020 and we was home and couldn't nobody leave the house. It wasn't nothing open outside. It was a lot of time for reflection, a lot of time for studying, fasting, a lot of that stuff. So I got these comparisons. So I wrote down what was going on in the roaring 20s. And I was looking at in comparison what is going on right now. And it's some things that I did this in 2020. So even looking at this now is like, wow, this is becoming more reflective of what I'm seeing today. So let me go through these. Um, let's start with this. America was pro business politics. Hmm. We had a president who I'm sure black people didn't like very much because they kind of deemed him racist. Was Calvin Coolidge, man. Calvin Coolidge. He set the pace for this decade by saying the chief business of the American people is business. While signing the 1924 immigration bill, he is quoted as saying, America must be kept American. Do y'all kind of see that forming right now? People saying we got to keep America American. Okay. Well, this is kind of the same times, like when America's doing very well in the 1920s. What's happening is everybody's trying to get there. There's a lot of people trying to migrate in. And so America got to put the clamp with the immigration. Same thing as today. Republicans won most of the presidencies in these times. Government corruption got out of hand. Warren G. Horton, cabinet, for instance. So in those times, a lot of corruption. And today, you look at Republicans and Democrats. Republicans back then were the Democrats, and Democrats back then were the Republicans. Um, but the thing is, today, none of this matters because I believe corruption is out of hand on both sides so bad that it just can't be won. All of them are in on it. So it's kind of a everybody thing at this point. Businesses were favored over people. Don't y'all see that today? These businesses becoming behemoths, and they don't have to listen to people anymore because that's who's feeding them their money. Governments try to weaken unions. Hmm. You see that happening today? The unions think they're getting into strong deals, and deals look really, really bad right now. They're having to lay off a bunch of people. You lay off people, you weaken the unions. Cabinet members share pro-business views. Hmm. Ain't that your cabinet members today? Pro-business, very pro-business views. Laissez-faire capitalism, or let do, or allowed to do, as the French would say, was favored, which was the time of decreased regulation. So in 2008, a lot of regulations were put into place to keep a lot of corruption down. But through time, these things like lay less and they peel back and peel back and peel back and peel back. And then some of the same things that we were going through back then, we are going to go through again because the same people were allowed to roll back the same regulations that we had in place to regulate some of the things they're doing, such these derivatives and funny ways that they do finance and stuff like that. A lot of it's going to be coming to bite them in the butt in a minute. Let's go to the next section. The next section is credit. This was a time of mass production and new products being introduced, what led to the uses of credit being over leveraged. Wow. So What are we looking at today? We're looking at trillions of dollars worth of credit card debt, and a lot of new products. You got shows like Shark Tank, and people are in a creative mode because when you have a new worker class, people can become more creative. People can go to school. People can start getting more educated, things of that nature. So when people get into high society, they start using high amounts of credit. So we're back basically in the same place we were before, with the credit card debt. Moving along. Another title. The title for this one is business. Businesses, business was great in the 20s. Assembly line work helped productivity. So it's not really assembly line work today, it's tech. Tech's the new assembly line. America became the world reserve currency in the 20s, which improved the financial status and helped industry. Now, when you look at stuff like this, America is on the tail end of this world reserve currency thing. That probably has to do with a lot of war, pushing countries over and forcing them to do foolishness. And then you have all of the war, most namely the war that's going on right now, that's really going to push people over the edge and say, okay, we probably need to look in another direction as opposed to the country that we put in charge of the world. So I'm telling y'all better watch out for this one. People made more money, so they bought more. This is kind of what's happening today. People get into the middle class. They say, "Oh, I got to buy a new house." What happened when you got to buy a new house? You got to buy new furniture. If you want to look the part at your job, you buy a new car. And so all of these things you just bought are brand new bills that you don't own none of it unless you bought it cash. You don't own it. So you're just buying more to create more bills. Corporations got rich and employees got the short end of the stick. Well, you see that with AI today. Keep your eye on that. This is why I'm telling people. I tell people a long time ago, you better create something. You better create something. If you want to survive, you better create something. Wealth gaps were created between the wealthiest 5% that exceeded that of the bottom 60% of Americans. 40% of Americans were in poverty. Wall Street celebrated big returns. Corporations left the North and headed south for cheap labor. So that's probably three or four things. And so we're looking at the top 1% that probably own more than 90% of the whole population in the United States. Um, and so that exceeded that of 60% of them. It's higher than that right now. It's way higher. 40% of Americans lived in poverty in the 20s. And that's what I'm saying. Like when you look at poverty now and how it's just building, 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 and people are becoming broker because the prices of things becoming more expensive. A lot of people are finding themselves homeless. Um, and this problem is going over especially with AI, this problem is going to be way more prevalent over time. People are going to start moving back in with the parents and stuff like that. It's just a reversal. It's just like a pattern, man. Everything comes in patterns. And right now, in these times, we're on the up end of the pattern. Right now, we're not looking like we're in the up end of the pattern. Um, Wall Street celebrated big returns. Wall Street just hit 40,000 for the first time in Dow Jones history. Pop your balloons, pop your champagne. When you hear stuff like that, you be like, start gritting your teeth. Please. Corporations left the North and headed south for cheap labor. Well, what's happening now? Texas, Florida becoming real prospective hotspots for big companies because we don't have state tax and we have a lot of tax benefits for business. So people, corporations, Tesla, all these they moving from the west, they're moving down to Texas. They're moving up into Florida. They're moving into warmer areas that are less from down south. So this is happening today, man. Even you're watching a migration of people. Well, let's come on with this thing here. Let's go to the next topic we got here: domestic terrorism. The resurgence of the KKK became more popular as white people in America saw immigration rise. attacks and lynchings became more prevalent. When I say this, man, people be thinking I'm playing. But when you look at history, man, people really don't change. They kind of are who they were in the beginning. When you watch the beginning of America, it was two brothers. It's two brothers that came here, and they had differences of opinions. You had the Union, you had the Confederates. These are two brothers that are in America. They have never went anywhere. They are still there. Their hearts still the same. How they thought back then, most of them are in government, think the same exact way as their forefathers. Do not forget. And right now, back through time, they've always had common ground and had a common love for one another. And red and blue was cool. Red and blue, they was cool. A Democrat, they argue on Capitol Hill with a Republican, and they go eat steak afterwards. Well, it's not the same anymore. These brothers do not get along anymore. But there's a common person in the middle. It's a common person in the middle. Um, and the resurgence of the KKK came as white people in America saw immigration rise. Don't y'all see immigration coming to the breaking point in America? And people are saying we got to keep American American. And then we got attacks and lynchings becoming more prevalent. I'm telling you, these attacks and these lynchings, they're probably right there in plain sight. People can't even see them. Just go to Chicago and shoot into a crowd. People say, oh man, the gunman, they just came and start shooting. We don't know who it was. You don't know what's going on, dog. Like it's some real musty shit in the air. And if you cannot feel it, I don't know what you going through. White men came home from war, this is World War One, with no money. So they got mad towards Jews, Catholics, immigrants from Europe and Asia, and most namely, black people. Black people saw the worst end of this stick. Don't ever think that these two brothers see you as an equal. These two brothers that started America never saw black people as an equal. So they always got the worst end of the stick. But as you see the new inclusive America where we are today as opposed to where we are back then, Jews, Catholics, immigrants from Europe and Asia are way more accepted today in common because they've immersed more into what we've seen here in America. But black people, man, everybody still really think the same way about you. America still think the same way about black people. In 1921, there was a revival of the white supremacist group, the KKK, targeting black people. There's stories about it. You got your Mississippi burnings and all of that, where the government just had to step in and say, enough is enough. You can't just keep killing these Negroes like this. So let's move on to the next thing. We got black prosperity. The Harlem Renaissance is what I had in parentheses. So that's kind of what I was going to focus on because New York became super popping during this time. Black people started to move north, which is why Harlem became the mecca of black entertainment. High culture flourished. Now you're starting to see these same things in the South today, where Houston, Atlanta have really, really taken off. Dallas are taking off. Miami done taken off. But you got Atlanta like Mecca. Atlanta is the new Mecca of black entertainment. So none of this stuff changes, just the city names. The people be migrating. So a lot of people then migrated to Atlanta. And Atlanta became the new mecca of black entertainment. So they kind of took the place of the Harlem Renaissance. They're probably going to look back on it called the Atlanta Renaissance, something like that. These were prosperous times. Dance crazes and movies became America's pastime. Don't you see that today with all of these streaming channels? Man, that's by 50 million streaming channels. All of them got their own shows, their own stuff that they done created. So people can watch Netflix, and Netflix got 10 new shows every month. So it's always something new to watch on TV. because these are prosperous times. People can create more because they're more free with their time. It ain't like you was working on the farm, man. You had to work till 9. Then after you get off work at 9, tending to your farm, then from 9 to 12, you doing content creation. It's not like that. Like, that's not how the world works anymore. Like, people work their little 8 hours, they get off. People have time for content creation. They got time to hang with their friends. They got time to kick it. Got time to be on dating apps and all this. People did not have time like that after the Great Depression. They had time like that. People had to find something to do, had to find something to eat. Hollywood emerges in this time too. So you're watching Hollywood get extremely extravagant at this time. Hollywood right now, they probably on the decline a little bit because these movies probably ain't smacking as hard as they was. But of course, we have seen Hollywood emerge in this time. Women free expression. This piece, this little piece of information, I took like a small snippet. I didn't want to put everything in it, man. I didn't want women to think I was bashing them, but this is what was happening back then. Tell me if anything looks like it is moving in the direction of going back to the way things are. Hold on, check me out. Women won the right to vote. And women might say, well, we always had the right to vote. Okay. Well, you got that. You got me on that. So this was a time where women got the right to vote. And this time, women have more rights over their bodies. They became more free drinking and smoking in public and wearing sexier clothing. This was happening back then before a revival came in and people got poor and people got more religious because they seen extreme poverty and they got way more religious again. They said, oh, okay, we got to get our families back in order because we're poor now. We don't have bread no more to be going out dancing and shit, and drinking and smoking all day. We got to stay home, take care of these kids. It's a lot of stuff going on in the streets. We see what the devil look like, so we got to tighten up. Men still wanted women to be homemakers. Don't y'all see this happening right now? Men looking at all these free women outside and say, man, it would really be great if y'all were homemakers. Women like, you just don't want us to be free. And men be like, I don't want you. Some men do want your freedom. They do. But some men be like, okay, it's a strange thing going on today. But you can see that men are starting to look at women and like, damn, man, what's up with the homemaking skills? Like, and so this is women free. It's just like women were given more right to be more free in this time. Press censorship. In this time, there's a lot of foolishness going on. I'm sure press wasn't as big as it is today. It was way more control. But even in these times, they had press censorship. The next one, immigration. Whew, immigration. It's like I touched on immigration in the beginning, but I had to come back to immigration because immigration has some stuff going on with it. So the first immigration bill was signed in 1921, and the second was signed in 1924, further limiting how many immigrants were allowed from Europe. All Asians were banned at this time, except Filipinos, of which only 50 were allowed per year unless they were going to work in Hawaii. So if you're understanding why Hawaiians might look a certain shade of Asian, that's because they had some Filipinos mixing in with the Hawaiians because the Filipinos went there to work. A lot of stuff that happened back then, people think of no result now. Like the faces of people might have changed because certain people were immigrating to certain places. Um, there's a lot of stuff going on during that. I'm sure what we're just touching on with immigration was a lot worse. I'm sure the people who come in here were getting treated way, way, way worse. Labor migrations. People move to bigger cities because that's where the jobs were. So what's happening right now in America is the big cities are getting bigger, so they have to build more, build more, build more because people are coming from these country towns where these one corporation might have held a whole damn town together, or one college might have held the whole damn town. One prison might have held the whole town together. The prison leave, there ain't no more jobs in the town. So now they got to move to big cities to accommodate the money that they lost there in big town. So you seeing it happening there. A lot of people that moved to Houston. Houston that changed a whole lot, whole lot. So, and we saw our first migration, big migration, come with Hurricane Katrina in 2005 that left lasting impacts on the city. Like Houston is like a food capital now because of that influence. Because our food was already good, and then people came from Louisiana, and their food was good, and then they put our food together, and it just became a fusion of fantasticness. And then Houston became, in a sense, an international city in that moment. So what we're witnessing now, we see a lot of people coming from Michigan, we see a lot of people coming from California, New York, um, of course, Louisiana, Oklahoma. We be getting a lot of transplant people from here. And so Houston that definitely changed over this time. So we're seeing a lot of labor migration, especially with Dallas and all these other places. They've grown substantially, especially since 2020. Prohibition led to high amounts of crime, also empowered people involved with organized crime. We're starting to see this with cartels and all the weed and the drugs coming in. It's just new drugs now. You got fentanyl, you got weed, you got all different types of things that have a prohibition against them that other countries have gained substantially on by bringing in those products. China with the fentanyl. Well, people allegedly they say it is China that was bringing over. I don't know that for sure. Um, then they talk about the cartels, they bring over drugs, stuff like that. So it's a different type of prohibition. It might not be alcohol this time, but there's a different type of prohibition going on. World wars brought depression. The depression of 1920 and 21 lasted about 14 months and was followed by the roaring 20s, which brought a period of economic prosperity. Now, what we're looking at is from 2008, which was the crash, and then we're looking at 2024. So we had a period of time where we didn't flourish since 2008. We didn't really flourish since 2008. We didn't went up since 2008. And now we're looking at people doing the same thing that got us into this buildup in 2008. It took a long time for us to get to 2008 before that happened. It took a lot of bad policies to get to 2008. So right now we're looking at a bunch of bad policies that got us here in 2024. So we have World War coming. I don't give a damn what you saying in your heart. This is in prophecy. This World War is coming. And you can see exactly where it's for to happen at. So just go ahead, prep your life for that. But it's something that's gonna bring either the other. Like the war is gonna bring the depression, or the depression gonna bring the war. Either way, it's coming. There ain't no way you're gonna be able to run from it. We got another section: stock market crash. Towards the end of the 20s, October 20, October 1929, the stock market crashed, and America's invested wealth suddenly lost 26 billion in value, which led to the Great Depression. If you want to go look up on Google what 26 billion in value, what is the equivalent of that value today? Go look and see what that is. And if you want to understand how bad the Great Depression was, think about it for Black people. So when I went into the Great Depression, I wasn't worried about every other ethnic group because, you know, I said I wanted to know what happened to my people because at this time right now that we're in, we're still at the lowest at the totem pole. All these other ethnicities that come into America and did very well. Black people still at the bottom. And so African American employment in the Great Depression was at 50%. And they were said to be last hire, first fire. Don't y'all see diversity, equity, and inclusion going away? They getting y'all asses up out of there. Getting you up out of there. Last hire, first fired. What you see happening today? What you think is happening today? When they're cutting down budgets, you to cut down. So be careful, man. Keep your eyes out. This stuff is very, very real. This is happening again. So that's kind of the end of my notes on the Roaring Twenties, man. I hope that you might not can take my word for it. Maybe you can go and look into it yourself. Maybe I was wrong on a couple of things, but you see it happening. You can look outside. You see what's going on. You see the price of these houses. You see what inflation is. You see what Jerome Powell is talking about with the Fed. You see what's going on. You see these banks just going out of business out of nowhere. You see, they're like, oh, it's normal. Just four banks. This happens every year. Okay. Okay. Just keep paying attention, man, to what's going on out here. Open your eyes a little bit. Hey, man, y'all have a good day, man. A good narcissist, man. Just giving y'all some information, man. Jock marinate on. Have a good one.